I've investigated every single gap since 2008, and I found that the odds of a gap being filled on the day is 58%. And here I'm talking about gaps more than 10 points. We're not caring about a gap of a 5 point, but any gap more than 10 points, there's a 58% chance that the gap will get filled on the day. So that you'll have to admit with me, that's kind of random. That's the kind of statistics that you're thinking, I can't really use that. But that's okay. Oh my God, ladies and gentlemen, I once investigated the tide in the Hudson River and correlated with the S&P 500 futures. It was an immensely interesting project. Taking the tide table from the Hudson River, drawing it on a chart, and then correlating it with the S&P 500. Do you know what I found? There's absolutely no correlation between the tide in the Hudson River and the S&P 500 futures, but it was interesting. But when I viewed the whole thing dispassionately, I came to the conclusion that there's absolutely zero correlation between the tide in the Hudson River. You may ask, how did you get onto such a crazy idea of the correlation of the tide to the S&P 500? Well, you've heard the idea that the full moon will influence the water. And, you've probably heard that notion of, lunar tech. It comes from lunar, full moon. And so the idea was thinking, well, hang on. If the moon can affect the waters to such an extent in the Hudson River, surely it must be able to affect us. No, it doesn't. I don't care. I actually studied this because I was quite curious, and this has got nothing to do with trading, but the evidence, the scientific evidence on the effect of the full moon on us, it is just rubbish. There's zero understanding, but that's the danger of half knowledge, half wisdom. So, a nurse comes out, that was a crazy night in this hospital. Oh my God, it's full moon. This is what we call an observational bias. So the next time, oh, that was a crazy night. But you're forgetting all the other nights that was absolutely quiet when it was full moon. Anyway, 58% doesn't really make a trend, does it? It's slightly biased to one side, but it's still pretty random. However, if I look at all the times when the gap is not filled on the day, I'm beginning to get something which is a little harder hitting evidence. I found that 78% of all gaps get filled at least within 3 days. So if you have an unfilled gap on day 2 and you're coming to day 3, you're thinking, well, there's 4 chances out of 5 that we're going to fill this gap today. It doesn't mean that I necessarily take a position according, but it's good knowledge to have in your background. See, this is what I call awareness, just like the mayonnaise example. I'm aware that it is there.